Okay, welcome into part two of our discussion about atomic structure and symbols. Last time we focused on atomic structure, and today we're going to focus more on atomic symbols. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first type of symbol that we have is what we call the nuclear symbol, where our focus is on, obviously, the nucleus of the atom. We're focusing in on what is inside of our nucleus. Here's an example. So here's an example of a nuclear symbol. Now let's go over the different parts of it, and then we'll practice. So this right here is what we call the element symbol. It tells you what the element is. In this case, it's an uppercase U, and when you look it up on the periodic table, the uppercase U is the element uranium. So we have our element symbol. This number down here is the atomic number, and as we discussed in the last video, the atomic number tells you the number of protons in the nucleus of the atom. This is also a number that you can find on the periodic table. Every periodic table will give you the atomic number of the element. Sometimes scientists, especially chemists, we're pretty lazy, and so sometimes we will give the element symbol, but we'll leave off the atomic number. Because as we discussed last time, if you know what the element is, if you know this is uranium, then every atom of uranium is going to have 92 protons. And so sometimes we're lazy, we leave this number off. I would like you to get into the habit of always putting that number there, but be aware that sometimes it won't be there. And that's okay. You don't need to stress out. The atomic number we can find on the periodic table. This number here is what we call the mass number. And as we discussed last time, the mass number is the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. This is a number that you cannot find on the periodic table. This is a number that you either have to figure out or it has to be given to you. So far we have our element symbol, we have our atomic number, and we have our mass number. The only part that we have left is this right here. This is the charge, and we find the charge by taking our number of protons and subtracting the number of electrons. Now, as we discussed in the last video, atoms are neutral. Atoms are always neutral, which means the number of protons and the number of electrons are always the same. There are times, however, and we'll discuss when and why that happens at a future time, but there are times when an atom will lose an electron or gain an electron. When that happens, we don't call it an atom anymore. Remember, we call it an ion because now it has a charge. Atoms are neutral. Ions have a charge. So in this case, this is an ion of uranium, and it has a charge of +1. Just like in math class, we sometimes don't put the 1 in front of the x. Same thing here in chemistry. If there's a charge of +1 or -1, you won't always see the number here. Sometimes, again, we're lazy, we'll just put the plus or the minus. If you have a +2 charge or a -3 charge or anything that's not 1, then you have to put the number here. But if it's a 1, again, sometimes we're lazy, we don't put it in. So this is what we call the nuclear symbol. 4 main parts: the element symbol, the atomic number, the mass number, and the charge. If it's a neutral atom, obviously you won't need to include a charge. The next type of notation is what we call hyphen notation. This one isn't as popular because it doesn't give as much information as the nuclear symbol does. So here's some examples of hyphen notation. Again, we're dealing with uranium, so we have U-235 or uranium-235. Obviously, this is our element symbol right here, this U, and then we substitute it. Sometimes you'll see it with the name fully written out, sometimes just with the symbol. So again, this is uranium, capital U, or we can write out the full name of the element. This number over here, 235, is our mass number, which is again protons plus neutrons. Now, there's some information that we don't put into this notation. Again, we don't put in the atomic number. The reason is, again, we're lazy. We don't have to put it in because every atom of uranium has the same number of protons. In this case, 92. Now, with hyphen notation, there is no way to represent an ion. There is no way to put in a charge, which means if you have an ion that you need to represent, do not use hyphen notation because there is no way to represent the charge. Okay, now let's practice. So let's start with aluminum. So remember from our last video, if there's no charge, and right now we'll assume that all of these atoms are neutral unless we are told otherwise. So this one, we are not told that aluminum has a charge, so we can assume that it is neutral. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the atomic number. Now the atomic number is 13 because the number of protons is 13. And since I know the number of protons and it's a neutral atom, I also know that the number of electrons is 13. That's the only way to get a neutral atom. The only thing I have left is my mass number, and if you remember, my mass number is my number of protons plus my number of neutrons. Add those together, you get 27. So this is the information that we know about this particular atom of aluminum. Okay, let's do another one. Let's practice with nuclear symbol notation this time. So here we have an atom of silver. Ag is the symbol for silver. All right, and now we have to fill in all of the information. So let's start with what we know. Well, this number down here in the bottom left corner is the atomic number. And so I can fill that in. That's the number of protons. That's the atomic number, 47. Remember, sometimes this number isn't here, but don't worry, you can find it on the periodic table. It's the big number. Since this is a neutral atom, it's neutral because there is no charge up here, then I know the number of electrons is also 47. This number in the top left corner is my mass number, so I'm going to fill that in now. It's 108. Now I need to do a little bit of math here because my mass number is protons plus neutrons. Well, if it's protons plus neutrons, the way I find my neutrons is I'm going to subtract. I'm going to take 108, I'm going to subtract 47, and I'm going to get 61 as my number of neutrons. Okay, let's do another practice. This time let's do it with hyphen notation. So here we have uranium-235, and we're going to fill out the information that we can get from this symbol here. Well, the easiest one to do would be my mass number because it's the only number that I'm given is 235. Now the other number, in order to figure out the other numbers, I've got to look it up on the periodic table. I have to find uranium on the periodic table. So you can use any periodic table you want for now. There's one on the wall. You can Google it. You'll find dozens and dozens and thousands of different variations of the periodic table. Any of them will work for right now. You just need to find the atomic number of uranium, which is 92. So we look that up. All right, so my atomic number is 92. Well, the atomic number tells me the number of protons, and since it's a neutral atom, it's neutral because it's hyphen notation, and there's no way to represent charge with hyphen notation. I know that electrons are also the same. Okay, now I have to do a little bit of math. So you might want to get your calculator for this one. Remember, my mass number is protons plus neutrons. So I'm going to take my mass number, subtract 92, since that's my number of protons, and I'm going to get 143. All right, one more. Let's practice an ion now. So here I have the symbol for an ion. I know it's an ion because it has a charge. This one happens to have a charge of +1, or one positive charge. So that's the first one I'm going to fill in right here is the charge. It tells me right here, +1. Now you'll notice two different notations. I did that on purpose because I want you to be familiar with both of them. Both are correct. Sometimes you'll see +1 or +2 or +3. Sometimes you'll see 1 plus or 2 plus or 3 plus. They mean the same thing. The notation is just a little bit different, but they mean the same thing. Okay, now that I have my charge, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this number in the top left corner. That's my mass number, and I'm going to fill that in here, 39. Now to fill in the rest of this, just like I did with the uranium example just recently, I have to look up what K is on the periodic table. And I have to find the atomic number for element K. K is the symbol for potassium. And so I look at potassium on the periodic table and I find that my atomic number is 19. All right, the atomic number tells me the number of protons. So I can fill that in. Now I'm going to leave electrons until the end, just for this example. Let's go on to neutrons. Now the way we find neutrons, mass number again is protons plus neutrons. So I'm going to do 39 minus 19 and I get 20. Now for my electrons, remember I have a charge of +1. The only way I can get a charge of +1 is if I have more protons than electrons. It's the only way I can get a positive charge, is more protons, more positive than electrons, than negative. And this number here will tell me exactly how many more. In this case, it's one more, so I would have 18 electrons. If this was +2, then I would have 17 electrons. What if it was -1? What if my charge were -1? Well, the only way I can have a negative charge is if I have more electrons. And if it was -1, that would tell me I have one more negative. So instead of 18, I would have 20 electrons. But for this example, +1 means I have more positive than negative. So I'm going to have one more proton than electron. Okay, those are some examples. Now go ahead and get out your notes and let's go through a couple of those examples together. Okay, so let's do some examples from your notes. Now I have a paper copy of my notes. You have a digital copy. I wanted to get a paper copy so that you could see how I'm actually going to be filling this out. So as I'm filling this out on my paper copy, go ahead and fill in the ones that we do together on your digital copy. Okay, so this is my first page of notes here. Uranium-235, I feel like we've already done uranium enough, so I'm going to go ahead and not do that one together with you. Let's do another one. Let's start with magnesium-24. So magnesium-24, the first thing I'm going to do is fill out the symbol of my element, because that's something I can just look up. So magnesium is Mg. Now I know I'm going to have to put numbers here. I just don't know what those numbers are yet. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my atomic number, and I look that up on the periodic table. So find Mg on the periodic table, find the big number at the top, and the atomic number of magnesium is 12. Okay, mass number, that's a number I know. It comes from right here, right? With hyphen notation, this number is my mass number. So I can fill that in right now, 24. Number of protons, I know because I know the atomic number. The atomic number is the number of protons, so I can fill that in. Once I know the number of protons, because this is a neutral atom, I can also fill in my number of electrons. My number of electrons has to be the same as my number of protons because it's neutral, and that gives me 12. Now for my neutrons, remember my mass number is protons plus neutrons. Protons plus neutrons. All right, so protons are 12. The total is 24. That means neutrons also has to be 12. Now I can finish my nuclear symbol over here. The number that goes on bottom is my atomic number, which is 12. And the number that goes on top is my mass number, which is 24. So that's how I would complete that one. Let's do another one. Let's do this one here, where they are given the nuclear symbol and we have to find the hyphen notation and all the rest of this information. So I'm going to look at my atomic symbol first, Si, and I look that up on the periodic table, and I know that Si is silicon. So I fill that in. And I know the number that comes after my hyphen is my mass number. My mass number is this number on top here. So this is going to be 28. Okay, the atomic number is this number on the bottom. I could also look that up on the periodic table. Mass number, still 28. Number of protons is the same as my atomic number. And my number of electrons is the same as my number of protons because it's a neutral atom. And now I just have to find the number of neutrons. Well, if the total is 28 and the protons are 14, that must mean my neutrons are also 14. Now, before you get too excited, protons, neutrons, and electrons, they're not all the same. They just happen to be in our example here. But you can see in the second one here that we haven't done yet, electrons and electrons and neutrons are not the same. Okay, let's do one more on this page, and then we'll do a couple from the second page. Let me pick one that doesn't have the name or the symbol in it so we can see how to figure that out. So let's start with this one right here, 35. So my mass number is 35. Well, that's not really going to help me very much until I know my protons or my neutrons. So that 35 is not going to help me right now. 17 for electrons does help me because electrons are always the same as my protons. So I can go ahead and put 17 over here. Well, now that I know my protons, I can go ahead and find my neutrons. 35 minus 17 is 18. Go ahead and double check my math. I'm doing this in my head right now, so I think that's right. All right, now I have these. Now I've got to figure out what my element is. What element is this atom I'm dealing with? Well, my number of protons is 17. That's the same as my atomic number. And now I can look up my atomic number on the periodic table, number 17. Number 17 is chlorine. So I write the name here for my hyphen notation, and I write my symbol here for my nuclear symbol. To finish my hyphen notation, the number that comes next is my mass number, which is 35. So my hyphen notation is complete. To finish my nuclear symbol, I'm going to put my atomic number down here, 17, and my mass number on top, 35. All right, so those are 3 examples from this page. Let's go ahead and take a look at the second page. Okay, the second page is very similar to the first page. The major difference is instead of having hyphen notation, we're just going to fill in the element name here. So to make it a little bit simpler. So let's go ahead and let's start with this one here, this 4. So I know my number of protons is 4. Okay, the number of protons is also my atomic number. The number of protons is also the same as the number of electrons. So now I'm going to find the name of my element from my atomic number. And I look for number 4. Number 4 is beryllium. And this is one I always spell wrong, so I have to look it up. I always forget 1 R and 2 L's for beryllium. Okay, now I'm going to fill in my standard atomic notation, which is what this worksheet calls it. That's what we're calling our nuclear notation. So beryllium is Be. My atomic number is 4. Now for this one, I don't have a mass number and I don't have neutrons. So here's what I want you to do for this activity, for this assignment. Look at the periodic table and round the atomic mass to the nearest whole number. Just for this one. I never will ever want you to do that again. But just for this activity, I want you to take the atomic mass from the periodic table and round it to the nearest whole number. So the atomic mass for beryllium is 9.01, so that's going to round to 9. So I'll write that here, I'll write that here, and then my number of neutrons would be 5. Again, we're only doing this for this activity. Never, ever, ever do it again. Please don't do it again. Okay, now that I have this, once I complete this, once you have this completed, I've included a Google drawing that I want you to color once you finish the second page of your notes. So I'm going to show you how to do it on paper, and then I'm going to show you how to do it on the computer. Okay, once I have this all completed, then I'm going to take this information and go to my my Google drawing. So your Google drawing is going to look something like this. Actually, it's going to look exactly like this. What you're going to need to do is find the symbols and the numbers that you wrote down. So for example, here I have beryllium. So I need to go through here and find beryllium, or find the symbol, not the name, the symbol for beryllium, which is Be. So I'm going to find it. I probably should have found that before I started the video. All right, and it's right here. So I'm going to shade that in. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to find 9, 4, 5, 4. So I'm going to find 9. Here's a 5. Here's a 5. Oops, I think I only needed 1 5. Yep. 9, 4, 5, 4. Here's a 4. And so that's what we would do, is we would find the numbers and we would fill them in if we were doing it on paper. Now let me show you how we're going to do this on the computer. So on Classroom, there is a Google Drawing. You're going to open it up and you're going to find something like this, which looks exactly like the paper that I was just looking at, that I was just showing you. So here's what you're going to do. Come up here to the line tool, and you're going to pick scribble. And you're going to go find the symbols and the numbers that you just wrote down. So for us, we found BE, which is right here. And I'm going to color that in with my scribble. Now I can go up here and I can change the color. Maybe I want it blue or I want it red. And I can change the thickness. However you want to do it. I mean, don't get crazy. Okay, and then I'm going to go find, there was a 5 right here. All right, and I want to make that the same color, same thickness. And then there was a 4 down here. Sometimes what I've noticed, and you've probably noticed it too, it'll be frustrating for you. It doesn't always record the scribble when you put it down. So one thing I've noticed is if that does it, you just come up here and you click on the arrow, click on this arrow here, and it should go away. So these are the answers that I have so far for the first one that we did together. That was the beryllium, and we did 9454. So we would still need to find a 9. Oh, there's a 9 right down here. So I'm going to fill this in as best I can. Now it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to do the best we can. And if we do this right, it should spell out a message when we're done. Okay? So once we have this done, once you have the notes done, then you come in here and you fill in the numbers and the symbols of what you've written down. If you have any questions, please, please, please let me know. All right, so that's the lesson for today. Like I said, if you have any questions, reach out, let me know. Feel free to help each other, work together, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.